Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and I'm back after 2 incredible weeks of vacation. As you know, my wife Ange has cancer, and London and Paris were on her bucket list, so we planned a trip for the whole family to check out the world. We started our trip in London, and I will say I was blown away by this city. The pub culture was so cool. Everyone gets a pint, and when you get it, you pay for it right then, and there's no tipping. If you have 10 beers, then you have 10 receipts. I like the system, and I love the beer even more. There's something about the foam and the beers in England that just hit a little bit different than anything I've ever had. It was also pretty cool how everyone seems to grab a pint, and then they leave the bar and they stand outside and talk and vape. Yep, it was crazy how many vapors there were in London. What else I noticed about London was it was a lot like the States, except for everything was done a little bit smarter and a little bit more efficient. I mean, they are the OGs, and that showed. While we were there, we saw all the sights, we did a ton of tours, and we really pushed Ange to her limits. Really, her poor body has been through so much. All the surgeries and all the drugs have really zapped her endurance. The good news was she'd been off chemo for a month to be in a better place for this trip. The bad news is the medicine is still wreaking havoc on her body, and the most noticeable side effects, other than the stamina, are the infections. Ange's chemo seems to create consistent ingrown thumb and toenails. And if you ever had a bad ingrown toenail, you know that pain. Ange's ingrown toenails are about 10 times worse than anything I've ever seen. And her ingrown thumbnails, well, they hurt worse than her toenails. I can barely look at either of them. And they were at their worst on this trip. So that was working against her. And then, on a walk to a pub one afternoon, I looked to my left and Ange is on a pile on the ground. She had sprained her ankle really bad on day 3, which meant she had to take a couple of down days, which was a total bummer, but we had a lot of time left, so it wasn't that big of a deal. I could go on and on about England because I really thought I loved it, but then I arrived in Paris, which is my new favorite city in the entire world. I thought I would hate this place. I mean, I've always heard that the French aren't that friendly, and while we did meet 3 snooty people, overall the French were so kind and most of them spoke English, and all of them seem to know how to live better than we do. Other than the whole smoking part. Everyone smokes cigarettes there. It's not about vaping like it was in London. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, when in France, you do what they do in France, and we did as well. Between the cafe culture, the art, the history, and the food, I really loved it. The only thing I found really odd about Paris was that there were no public toilets. And I know because I looked. On multiple occasions, I thought I was going to piss myself. The only reason I bring this up is because this summer, Paris will go from the 15 million people they normally have to 30 million people for the Olympics. And with no public bathrooms, it should be interesting to see what happens. What's also going to be interesting is the Paralympics. For as great as Paris was, I'd hate to be a handicapped person there. Nothing is built to accommodate the needs of people in wheelchairs. And while being in the Paralympic Games are a huge honor, I really hope they do something to make it easy on the athletes. If not, it's just going to be a slap in their faces while they do achieve the highest achievements of their careers. So I hope they do something for those athletes. And while I'll have more takeaways to share in the coming weeks about my vacation, and when all was said and done, I ended up walking a total of 292,000 steps, which equals about 131 miles. I ate a ton of food, drank a lot of beer, and I lost 3 pounds. So that was pretty cool. The best part of this trip, though, was that our family made some incredible memories, and you can never take them away from us. That's the trip recap. When I got back, I saw the Casualties after being up for about 30 hours, and they were an awesome show. And now I officially need a vacation from my vacation. But before I can start resting, I need to tell you about my guest this week. Jake Hopfinger was a Division I ski racer who couldn't finish a race, so he transferred to Montana State, learned how to ski powder, and found himself, thanks to COVID, with a unique opportunity to get in a TGR movie, and he ran with it. From there, he threw a double at the Kings and Queens of Corbet that put Jake on the global map, and that's all you need to know for now. Before I chat with Jake, I want to ask you to tell a friend about the show and share my social posts. Both those things really do help the show grow. Finally, I want you to support the incredible brands that make this show happen. I only work with the best, and they are Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, Outdoor Research, Elon Skis, Stanley, and Best Day Brewing. Now, let's chat with Jake Hopfinger. So first and foremost, you're just back from Alaska, and it sounds like everything lined up for your trip. Who was on the trip, and what were the highlights?
Yeah, Alaska, it's always a tough game. I was up there on a trip with Rab Outerwear, company I ride for. We were doing a foot power mission out of Anchorage, and then I saw this kind of blue window open up for the next week. And then I somehow finagled to get a heli and called the crew, and everyone was able to rally within like a shocking 24 hours. So it was myself, Maggie Voisin, Kate Zelliff skiing, and then we had an awesome team of filmers, Alex D'Agostino, Caleb Ely, and Jonathan Finch, our photographer. So we had a dream trip, you could call it.
And I ask women about this a lot because it's usually one girl with like 6 guys on a trip. But at this one, it sounds like it's 2 female athletes and 1 male athlete. And is it a different vibe when you're outnumbered by women on a trip? And is that a good thing?
I love it. Both those girls are some of my favorite people to ski with. And I not only respect their judgment and love to hang out with them, but they're also rip-in ladies. And I learned a lot from them. So it was a really good experience, and I'm happy they were able to pull it off. But I was making phone calls left and right trying to get a crew, so it was perfect.
Nice. So that's your Alaska trip. Now I'm going to bring up something. I usually like to start these podcasts with something that kind of is almost shocking per se, or an interesting story, and a strange rumor that I heard about you that I need to confirm. And I'll preface this with, I understand that everybody has a different opinion on things, but is it true that you think that climate change is a hoax?
No, I completely don't. I don't think it's a hoax at all. I sometimes think how the mainstream media presents it can be a little scammy sometimes, but no, I do not think it's a hoax, especially spending time in Alaska and flying around in helicopters. It's like you see these glaciers that have pulled back, like miles, some of them. So no, I completely don't think it's a hoax, but that being said, I do burn a lot of fuel and I don't feel good about it always, but it's how life goes and I try to be the best I can.
Gotcha. And so your whole problem with it is the way the media sensationalizes it?
I don't know. I just think there's a lot going on in the world, obviously, and I don't need to get too into it. But I think sometimes the media runs around in circles quite a bit. I think scare tactics are out there.
Okay.
But no, I'm not a crazy conspiracy theorist by any means, but I do like to go down the rabbit hole every once in a while.
All right. Well, I figured I should ask you that because I heard that rumor. And regardless of your opinion on what's going on with the planet, you grew up in Rochester, New York. And is it one of those places that gets miserably, miserably cold in the winter?
It does get pretty damn cold there. It's a great place. I loved growing up there. The skiing was, awesome. I was 10 minutes from the ski hill, so I was able to ski every day. But yeah, it gets cold, but we do get, the occasional little bit of snow. But yeah, it's not the best ski destination by any means.
Does it impact the skiing? I mean, does it get so cold that you have to stay in some days?
Yeah, I remember it being pretty cold. In fact, I went home 2 years ago and it was like the coldest. And I mean, I'm in Montana. It gets pretty dang cold here too, but it was freezing cold. It's like moist and humid and just freezing cold. Not great.
Okay. And you're put into ski racing at a young age. And do you come from a ski family with like a race background, or they just put you in there to get you on the mountain every day?
My dad grew up ski racing as well. It was a big part of my family, my extended family as well. I grew up skiing. I was with my cousins and really good buddies. So I was put into that ski racing program, really early on. But more or less, I just used it to go skiing every day, which was awesome. Wouldn't take it back for anything.
And when you think about the family, it sounds like you have an extended family that skis with you as well, but it's brother, sister, and your folks. And what do your folks do? And is it rich, poor, or average growing up?
We weren't well off. Well, we were fine. We were a very middle-class family, I'd say. Both my parents worked. But yeah, there was definitely a lot of sacrifice to be made to help me ski race through the years. It's an expensive sport, as you know, and gear is expensive. We were traveling all over the place. I'd go to Vermont with my dad like every weekend to go ski racing. So I thank him all the time for it. And I know there was a lot of sacrifice. So it was a cool way to grow up, though.
And so you're on this podcast because of your skiing, but were there any other sports like team sports or skateboarding or blading or anything for you?
I mean, I grew up kind of doing a lot of stuff. I was really into skating as a kid, kind of phased out of that. We rode mountain bikes all the time. I grew up playing soccer, played lacrosse, and yeah, I was definitely into it. I would say by the time I was halfway through high school, I was pretty focused on ski racing. That took up most of my time. But I played soccer through high school in the summertime. I loved that too.
And you grow up not that far from Buffalo, and I think that sets you up for a lifetime of heartache when it comes to professional sports. But the whole Bills thing was pretty crazy this year. Can you describe the whole jump off a car roof onto a folding table phenomenon that happens up there in Western New York?
Yeah, these people are into it. And to be honest with you, Mike, I'm not super into football. I root for the Bills and, everyone back home loves it. But it seems a little out of control to me. It's a part of life over there, though. They love that shit.
I mean, have you seen your buddies jump off cars onto folding tables, or were you gone before that started happening?
Yeah, I've seen videos on Instagram of my buddies doing it. It's ridiculous. They're getting hurt, like breaking their shoulders and stuff. But you know what? Respect to them. They're having a good time out there. But you won't catch me doing that.
Well, when you think of your drunken self, because I'm sure you've had a few beers before, what's the best drinking story where you've seen something get broken?
I don't know. I recall a few times we used to be really into going up in the mountains and like kind of winter camping. And I recall at one point we made a big old fire and we were skiing and we made a jump over the fire. One of my buddies who isn't super solid on his feet certainly fell right into the fire and kind of roasted himself. But no, we keep it pretty tight, pretty tight operation for the most part.
All right. And then going back to you as a kid, what other kind of shit were you into? Did you play any instruments? Do you have any other hidden talents? What are you good at that no one really knows about?
I was lucky growing up. I grew up with a lot of kind of like open land around me, and we had tractors and four-wheelers and dirt bikes and chainsaws and anything you can name. So we were always building stuff and messing around with motors and stuff. So I learned a lot growing up, and yeah, I mean, I think I just did a lot as a kid, and somehow here I am. But definitely some dumb stuff too.
And then it sounds like with ski racing, you had said that you go every weekend somewhere in Vermont with your dad. And is it one of those things where you're super competitive and you can't wait to be in the starting gate? Or is it just something that's fun and that you did, but it didn't define you? Like, how did you look at ski racing back then? Was it everything?
No, I think ski racing started off to me as like literally just an excuse to go skiing with my buddies. And as I started getting into it, I had great coaches and I got pretty good at it. And I really got pretty into it, honestly. I was traveling all around and I really looked forward to it. But I wouldn't say it was my everything. I really just remember loving skiing and skiing all the time. And I remember growing up ski racing and there was all these kids, we'd ski race in the morning and it'd be done and everyone would take the boots off and go. And I was always trying to go take a few more laps after the races and whatnot.
I mean, were you the kid in the park in your spandex after races just looking for air everywhere you went?
Yes, honestly, I recall this was fucking years ago. It was after a ski race. I was on my slalom skis, which are short little stiff things. And I was in my race suit and I did a backflip off one of the park jumps and all the park rats were like shitting on me. And I was like, I'm going to do a backflip in front of them. I think I got some respect.
And then in terms of your ski trips going up, because you grow up in the icy East Coast resorts where you're going and ski racing, but were there any trips out west when you were a kid where you got to see like big mountains and powder and stuff like that?
One time I remember I was probably a sophomore. We went to Snowbird in March, and looking back at it, it was probably the driest March Snowbird's ever seen. It was just rock hard snow. We didn't know any better. We were just ripping around. It was the coolest thing ever. But that's basically it. I was ski racing all through high school, and I didn't really have a ton of time or opportunity to go skiing out west or anything. But yeah, it was just ice coast ski racing for the most part. But, we had some pow every once in a while.
Yeah, I get it. And then how about the other aspects of skiing? Were you glued to the TV when the X Games would come on, or did you not care about that stuff?
Totally. I was super into it. I mean, from forever, my dad was buying DVDs of all the ski movies. So we were running ski movies up all the time. So I definitely was kind of invested in that side of the sport. So it was cool. Yeah. And we were, always getting magazines and whatnot. So I was definitely tuned in. I wasn't a part of it. So it was all new to me and cool.
So even though you're a racer, did you find inspiration from like the park pipe and backcountry skiers and even the urban ones? And who were the important skiers to you growing up?
I remember thinking Jon Olson was kind of the man because he grew up ski racing, kind of transitioned into that like big park, and he did the whole Jon Olson Invitational.
Yep.
And then a few years he went back into ski racing to try to qualify for the World Cups or the Olympics or something. And I think he pulled it off. And I remember thinking that was the raddest thing ever. Just like this sick ski racing dude who can also rip on the mountain and hit jumps and do tricks and whatnot. So I thought that was pretty cool.
How about ski racers? I mean, did you look at guys like Ted Ligety and think like, I want to be that dude?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think especially when I was young, I was looking at all these guys like, fuck, I think I could maybe do that. And I was chasing it and running and gunning. And then honestly, probably towards the end of my career, I was like, I'm just not fast enough. Like I'm getting smoked out here. And I started to like consider the option of not ski racing anymore, which came on pretty quick when I was first year of college. I went to college for a year to ski race too. So, I was into it, but it wasn't my end all be all.
When you think about how far you took it in high school, like where did you make it to? Were you heading to like junior nationals and stuff like that and winning races?
Yeah, I was like qualifying for all like the junior nationals, under 18 nationals, whatever they call it. my fastest discipline was like the speed, the super G and the downhills, which is a tough thing to ski because there's not that many races and it's hard to train it. So I wasn't able to ski it too much, but I always look forward to those like downhills and super Gs. Sugarloaf and Killington had a downhill and stuff. So it was pretty cool for those.
Okay. And then I like to find out who kids were when they were in high school because I feel like that's pretty defining of who you're going to be throughout the rest of your life, although I know that does change. So you're a ski racer, we know that. But what kind of music were you into? What kind of shit were you doing outside of skiing? And how would others describe you in high school?
I don't know. I was a pretty reasonable kid. I wasn't like a party kid by any means. I smoked a ton of weed in high school, but other than that, I kept it pretty mellow. And me and my buddies were just kind of always doing dumb shit. We were built like tree houses and big ass dirt bike jumps and stuff. And, we were always up to shit. Stayed plenty busy for sure. But no, I was a pretty decent student through high school. And I just was really wanting to have as much fun as I could, I remember.
So you graduate high school, you end up at this small private college in New Hampshire to ski race. And when you think about your goals with racing when you go to college, are there hopes and dreams of making the U.S. ski team? Or do you realize it's all about fun and you're just going to do it in school?
No, honestly, I think when I ended high school, I didn't know any difference. I was young and dumb and I was into ski racing still. I think I had a pretty good opportunity to go to school for pretty cheap and keep ski racing. And it was a rad little area. Let's do it. I don't think I was necessarily like, obviously I'd love to have made the U.S. ski team and everything, but I don't think it was like the main goal for me. I just wanted to go to college, continue to ski and see where it went, but it didn't last too long.
You said you wanted to go to school and it was cheap, but as Colby Sawyer sounds like a private university. Did they give you any funding for skiing? Did you get like some help?
I think I did. I think I got it like pretty dang affordable just through that skiing, I would imagine. It was a pretty easy choice for me, honestly. I went up there. I was like, yeah, this place is sweet. The ski hill was really close. The ski team was rad. The coaches was really good. So, yeah, it was easy.
And I look at your results, and you were never able to keep it together. It's like you DNFs and DNQs almost every single race. And do you go into races with the mindset of like, I'm going to absolutely pin it, and I'm either going to win or I'm going to blow up, and that's my mentality?
Oh, totally. That was absolutely it. So you can see like splits in a lot of these ski races. There'll be like 4 splits to the bottom. So you can like see how fast you were on the top or the middle or the third or whatever it is. And I was always pretty in on the split. I just couldn't put a run together for the life of me, especially that year I was in college. I was just getting smoked. And the ski racing level's pretty high on like the Division I ski racing. So
it's all like Euros and former World Cup people that couldn't go any further, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a lot of Euros that are like getting full ride scholarships to go to like Dartmouth or, Harvard or all these great schools. Are like, sweet, I can keep ski racing. So these really low point, high level ski racing. And I was just like a young and dumb kid and showed up and just got spanked. So I pretty quickly was like, yeah, this isn't for me anymore. I'm over it.
In terms of racing and not really finishing too many races, is that frustrating and does that wear on you when you can't finish a race and you can't do as well as you think you should be able to do?
Oh, for sure. It's like the worst thing ever. It's kind of your job is to finish a race because obviously you need that for a ski race. And I couldn't put anything together. So I was just like over it for sure. I remember in probably February or March, I was like, oh, this kind of sucks. And so it was like a terrible winter. And I had my power skis there. I was like trying to go skiing and I just couldn't ski. And I got busted smoking weed in the dorms, which was dumb. And I like had to opt out of a race. It just it didn't seem super happy there, to be honest.
Okay. So you got busted smoking weed in college. You smoked a bunch in high school. Is it something that you still partake in, or is it something that's kind of phased out?
No, I don't anymore. I keep joking I'm going to get back into it, but I'm not at all. It kind of came and went. And I didn't smoke a ton of weed. I was like just like a normal high school kid running around, being dumb.
And then I'll say in your next life in the big mountains, skiers who have a race background, they seem to find more success in the long run based on ski technique, or at least that's what I've seen. Is that a real thing, or is that some wild assumption that I'm making?
It's funny because I look at like Kate Zelt, for example, like just in Alaska skiing big mountains with her, and you can just kind of look at someone and be like, oh, you totally grew up in ski race boots, and like you can just see it out of people. I don't think it's the end all be all for anyone. Tons of the best skiers in the world, I don't think ever ski race. They're just athletic as hell, and it works for them. But I don't think ski racing hurts. I'll tell you that much.
I mean, how often do you see a kid who can throw doubles on just about anything, but he can't really carve a ski that well?
I mean, a lot of them. I think a lot of these park kids, they're just training. They're going straight, hitting huge park jumps. So you don't necessarily see them ski like really good power, ride the hill super well, but they can definitely do tricks, which is, super rad. I have tons of respect for those guys, but I think it's cool to be able to do it all.
Do you have any skiers like that in your crew who can do any trick that you can name, but if you just see them carve down some gnarly terrain, you can tell they don't have that race background and they're not that solid under their feet? And do you end up giving them shit for that?
Honestly, not really. All the people we ski with are just insanely good skiers. It's insane.
Okay.
No, not really. But yeah, some guys certainly are leveraging their tricks rather than their turns, I'd say.
And I guess with you, if you watch like over your career, while you can spin and you've proven again and again that you can do it, it's more like the flip tricks and just big airs and being solid under your feet is what you've kind of made a name for yourself with. And I'm sure there's other people who can spin, the tens and stuff like that, but that's never been your game.
No, not at all. You know what? It's kind of funny. I'm like just now learning how to land a cork sev. Which is crazy. So no, I'm like totally not a trick guy. I do like the bare basics and I kind of keep it to that. But I think I've definitely built most of my like ski career off of big line skiing or hitting clips or whatever. Just because I'm a lot more comfortable doing that, honestly. I get scared hitting jumps.
It's time for my first sponsor break, and I'm going to start things out with Peter Glenn Ski and Sports. Summer is right around the corner, and based on the past couple of years, it's going to get really, really hot. And getting in the water is the perfect way to enjoy the heat. But you need to do it right, and Peter Glenn is your one-stop shop for all of your needs this summer. Think wakeboard, water ski, kneeboard, tubes, swimwear. They have everything to make your summer more fun and functional. Peter Glenn has all the brands, all the products, a knowledgeable staff, a best-in-class website if you can't make it into their stores, and a low price guarantee. That's right. If you find a lower price on a product that Peter Glenn is selling at a reputable dealer, call up Peter Glenn, let them know that price. They will match that for you. That really does help support the show by buying from Peter Glenn, and they're going to give you free shipping on orders of $50 or more. Peter Glenn isn't one of those big guys trying to take over the industry. They're the mom and pop shop that you've trusted to get your gear you need at the best prices for over 70 years. To find out more, head on over to peterglenn.com. Next up, it's Outdoor Research, and I've been using OR products since I moved to Seattle almost 25 years ago because they outperform everything on the market. I mean, Outdoor Research builds products to perform in the wet, soggy, cold weather of the Pacific Northwest. And when you live where we do, you need to have the best in class, and that's what OR's always been. While OR's always been known for building the industry-leading gear for mountaineers, and they still do that, over the past few years, they've been focusing on working with their A-list athletes in the ski and snowboard world to create new fits and kits for the snow scene, which everyone has seen on X Games podiums and on legends like Mark Abma. And now, OR is launching its freewheel mountain bike collection, and there's no cutting corners here either. Well, I could tell you about it. Here's what the folks at Free Hub Magazine had to say about what OR is doing in bike. Outdoor Research, with its legacy rooted in scientific inquiry and a passion for the outdoors, has once again raised the bar, offering riding gear that's not just functional, but also stylish and durable. The meticulous designs and thoughtful engineering of the Freewheel collection have the power to transform the mountain biking experience. Reviews don't get much better than that, and to see all the new products that OR has, head on over to outdoorresearch.com. My final sponsor this round is Best Day Brewing, and while I love the taste of a good beer, I don't always need the alcohol. I mean, my life revolves around driving my kid places, running errands, interviewing people, and all of these things I do better when I don't have a head full of alcohol. These days, when I'm not partying, I still like to enjoy an ice-cold beer, and that's where Best Day Brewing comes into play. I love their hazy IPA, the Kolsch that you can get on all Alaska airline flights, their Electro Lime Cerveza, which is the first Mexican-style NA beer that I've loved, and their new White Belgian style. They're all just so amazing and have just as much flavor as any alcoholic beer you're going to find. And they average about 60 calories a beer, and they won't get you in trouble. That's when I'm not partying. And when I am partying, I mix in a few best days throughout the night, and I found that by doing that, I can stay out until last call. You should try it. To have the best day or night ever, head on over to bestdaybrewing.com and get 15% off your first order. And if you make that order over $50, we'll throw in free shipping. You can thank me later. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. I guess you probably realize there's no future in ski racing. You kind of get burnt out, and then it's time to head to the bigger mountains. You want to use those PAL skis. I'm guessing that's why you transferred to MSU?
Totally. I was like, had never been to Bozeman, which is where MSU is. And I kind of was just like Googling. I knew a few kids that lived out here, and I was like, oh, this place seems pretty sweet. It's 20 minutes to the ski hill. I can keep going to school. Signed up for classes, never came here, just showed up in like, September when classes started, and kind of haven't left. I kind of call it home now.
And who do you meet early on, and who becomes your crew in Montana?
So we were kind of into slacklining. You know what slacklining is?
Yeah, I know what it is. It's like hippie stuff in the summer.
Totally hippie stuff in the summer. So I kind of was into that, show up in August, and I started seeing all these people slacklining, and I was kind of into slacklining at the time. So I just built this like epic group of buddies, and we were into slacklining, and we got into highlining, which you rig those things way up and over these cliffs and stuff. And all those guys are still like my best buddies to this day. So it was a rad crew.
Nice. And so you probably transitioned into skiing with that crew. There was some of that crew at least.
Totally.
And when you grow up skiing in Western New York, a place that doesn't have many POW days, probably has a few here and there, and you move to a place where everybody is frothing for POW, how long does it take you to learn to ski in the deep stuff?
Probably a few years, I'd say. I was really, oh my God, I moved here, got a Bridger Bowl pass, and I was so into it. Like, I think the most I've ever skied in my life has been those first 2 or 3 years. I was living in Bozeman, going to college, and I was skiing every day. It was crazy. I set my classes up to just be in the afternoon. I'd go skiing every day. And I just started to like connect with these people that were also doing the same thing, that were ripping good skiers. And yeah, we just kind of got a posse together, and we all carpooled up to the hill every morning, and we skied every day. It was like the best time of my life for sure.
And what I find that's wild about your ski career is you transferred to MSU in 2015, and by 2016, it sounds like, based on what you're saying, you still don't know how to ski totally well in powder yet, but by 2016, you already have Pret as a helmet sponsor. And do you send around season edits to brands? Like, how were you able to make sponsorship happen so early for you?
I remember I was just like, I think if I just post on Instagram a ton, I'll maybe be able to get a pair of skis or something. And there was actually this dude named Tim Dyer who grew up in Rochester, and he was kind of a family friend of ours. He like managed the ski shop growing up, who then went on to work for Liberty Skis out of like Vail area, Colorado. And I remember I saw him around, or he called me one day, and he's like, hey dude, what's your address? I'm going to send you a pair of skis. And I was through the moon about it. And then that's kind of where it started for getting product.
Yeah, because before you were on the Liberty skis, I think I saw some edits where you're on old Seth skis. I'm guessing that's probably the last pair of skis that you bought was like the tribal-looking Seth ski.
I think so, yeah.
And you end up on that Liberty program. Is that during the David Lesh days of Liberty?
No, I don't believe David Lesh was on Liberty at that point. The team manager was Colin Sutherland, and then, yeah, Timmy Dyer was kind of another guy over there. And those guys were awesome through the years. I was loving that ski, and they were helping me out a ton, and it was just like, I was so excited about it. At that point, I was just getting skis and like just skiing the hill as much as I can wearing a GoPro. It was awesome.
They support you. You've got Pret supporting you. I think you get on the Fly Low program at that point. And is anybody hooking you up with any travel, or are they just sending you some product?
No, I was getting product. I think one year I got like a few $1,000 out of Liberty for like, yeah, travel or whatnot. But I wasn't even traveling. I was just skiing Bridger Bowl, Big Sky.
Yeah, so you're just living the locals' life of going to school, skiing every single day. You're getting free gear, and eventually you end up moving on from those brands. And I'm just going to talk about all the sponsorship stuff right here.
Totally.
And when I say you moved on, did you get dropped, or was it more that you had an opportunity with other brands and you had to take that?
No, I started to like figure out how this industry worked a little bit. So I got good at sending emails and like, hey, I want to do this. This is my season plan. We're going to go here. We're going to get a sled. We're going to do all this. I got filmers. And I started just kind of shooting messages out to anyone I could. And a few people started biting. So I started to like kind of realize I could maybe make a little money. Wasn't a lot, I'll promise that. But, I kind of was like, I'm going to take the money. And all the other sponsors were super cool. Like, dude, you should take the money and run. Like, loved having you. It was great. And I still talk to all the old sponsors still to this day. So they're great.
Awesome, man. I mean, these days you ski for Line, Rab Equipment, BCA, Sweet Protection, Montucky Cold Snacks. So a really solid list of sponsors. But the one thing that you don't have, which is interesting to me, is you don't have a boot sponsor. And when I think about that, you come from ski racing, and ski racers are used to wearing plug boots. Do you still wear plug boots?
I do still wear plug boots, and that's kind of the reason I can't get a boot sponsor, because I kind of get boots still here and there. Like, I was riding for Lang, and they're like, dude, we kind of need you wearing like the touring free ride boot. And I would try it, and I just couldn't make it work for me. So I was always just jumping back into that plug boot. So honestly, I'd rather buy my boots and ride the boot I want than to wear a boot that doesn't work, you know?
And for those that don't know what a plug boot is, I mean, it's a ski race specific thing for the most part, but you're in a lace-up liner. I think it's got thicker plastic walls, and it's just a tighter fit all around. I would think in the bitter, brutal cold, it's got to be way worse being in one of those boots. Your feet just have to be destroyed.
Yeah, they suck. They're brutal. No, but they're the best boots ever. I'm convinced. They're just like so consistent with the flex, and they hold up and they're tight and they're easy to work on too. Everyone thinks they're like super uncomfortable, but my boots are super comfortable. They're just heavy and horrible for walking and ski touring and stuff.
Yeah. And then when you think about the flex of the boot that you're used to, I mean, for a lot of people out there, 130 is probably the highest that anybody's going to go. What do you ski on?
It's a 140 Head Raptor.
Okay.
It's a fantastic ski boot.
And then when you think about the dollars that you're able to make skiing, I mean, you've got that solid list of sponsors. Are you able to make six figures skiing every season?
You could, but I don't. I don't make six figures. I'm maybe close to it, but no, definitely not. I wish, man.
You say you wish. I'm sure you're going to be able to make that happen as long as you kind of make the right deals and meet the right people. But it sounds like you also have a side hustle that makes you a lot of coin as well. And it's like you've got this program where you're flipping cars and trucks and sleds, and you make a lot of money from that. What's the most money you've ever made from one of your deals?
Car deal?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Definitely over 25 grand.
Whoa.
On a flip. I love it, man. It's the best. Although car market's coming back. So I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully I can keep it going. But right now I'm sitting on quite a few trucks that won't sell. But it was fun. It's just like under the table side hustling, basically.
With that side hustle, does that mean that you don't have to have a job to pay for anything with skiing? It's like you can just ski and do your side hustle and that's it?
Yeah, the past few years, totally. I mean, I've worked quite a bit, build mountain bike trails as well, but I really just like to do that a lot. So I'll do that and I'll sell a few cars here and there, and ski money is good enough. So yeah, it's been an epic, past few years.
You've got a good thing going with all your sponsor support and your side hustle. You graduate school in like 2020, but it's not like you're going to go out and get a job. At this point, had you already met Parkin Costain, and have you guys become fast friends yet? Because it seems like you connected with him, and then from there, both of your careers kind of exploded a little bit.
I met Parkin probably like 2 or 3 years after I was living in Bozeman, and yeah, we just hit it off. We're like super into the same stuff, and we're the best of buddies. So it worked out so good. Yeah, he's still my best buddies.
And then how did you two meet the guys from Benshi Creative, and who are those guys?
So basically, they were MSU students the same year I was. They were in the film program, all of them. And then, how it started actually was we got this like pretty crazy overnight storm. It snowed like almost 3 feet. And I convinced these guys to go ski touring with me to film POW. So like we had like 3 filmers up there, and they all had like rental gear, I think, from the school.
Yep.
And we just started chipping away and shooting POW, and we like kind of were having a blast together. And then talks kind of started happening like, hey, I think we could make a ski movie. I think we could get it funded and all this stuff. And we kind of just started running with the program, and it worked out.
Was it pretty much like those guys are going to be the creative and the filmers and take all the cameras and get all that stuff, and then you and Parkin are going to leverage your sponsors to get the money for it, and then you guys all team up together?
Oh, totally. Yeah, Parkin totally had bigger sponsors than I did. So we were kind of like, all right, Parkin, see what you can get. I'm going to see what I can get. We got to come up with this number to get the crew locked in. And like somehow, like every year we were getting the number and we were doing it, which was cool. But fuck, man, we were not making money on those. We were barely making ends meet.
No, and when you shoot with Benshi, I think the first one is dollar short. And the things that stand out about their projects, that one and every one that they do, is they have an actual storyline. And I'm not going to spoil any of them. But that means you guys have to act. Was that hard for you? Not the skiing part, but the acting part?
Oh, totally. Well, I'm a horrible actor. I'm sure you've seen those. I'm not at all good at it. But it was cool to have filmmakers by trade, like bringing ideas to the table, because those totally weren't our ideas. We're like, we got to make something different. I'm by far the best skier in the world. I got to like have something that makes me stand out a little bit. So we were kind of like, let's bring something new to the table and make weird little movies with a storyline.
Do they have the storyline and the creative process, and then you and Parkin are the horses getting the footage, or are you involved in that creative as well?
We were all pretty involved, honestly. I mean, I think honestly how it all started with Collar Short, we had a whiteboard like shooting ideas, like anything you could come up with. And we're like, God, we got to get some money for all this. We're like, what if we just rob a bank? we're like, oh, that'd be kind of a sick storyline. And that's kind of where we ran with it.
Did you have any idea like how the concept was going to fully play out during the editing process? Or is it something that you see when it's ready and you're like, holy shit, that was our vision and it worked out?
No, we had to go back and shoot and reshoot and get little shots to fill the story in. Like we were shooting for that project, like basically all the way until it was released. Like we just needed little shots. We were putting like in the timeline of the edit, we were putting in like, this is the shot we need. We'd have to go get it. But luckily they were just like stupid little acting bits. So we were able to pull it off pretty quick.
Yeah. So those guys need to figure out what they were doing too. And they learned a lot with you as well on that project.
Yeah. I think all of us really kind of grew off of each other through those Benshi days. And yeah, it was the best. And we're still shooting with them to this day. So it's awesome.
Yeah. And I would say the most important part of the Dollar Short year was somehow a deal was worked out with TGR and you made it into their movie, but it wasn't like the traditional pay to play, get in their movie. How did that happen?
Yeah, that was a crazy one. And it worked out like the best it possibly could have for me. That was 2020. So COVID, and it must've been March. So basically we'd been shooting all winter and we had like a pretty good stack of footage. And then TGR called us in like, March or April or something. They're like, hey, we just got 4 trips that got canceled. Are you guys interested in doing a little footage share kind of deal? And I was all into it. I was like, fuck yeah, like that's kind of a great in. It's not going to cost me any money. I'm going to get a bunch of exposure and like we can just share footage. So it somehow worked out and thank God all the Benshi guys were down. So it was really good.
And were some of those Benshi guys involved with TGR as well? Or was that just me making stuff up in my head?
No, they were. Actually, Alex D'Agostino, who's kind of our main cine, was shooting as a head cine in Jackson all winter. And he was the one who kind of tipped us off. He's like, hey, boys, a bunch of stuff just got canceled. Maybe we could work something out. And yeah, our like editor, Caleb Chacoin, and all those guys were interns at least at some point with TGR.
So you're saying that pretty much COVID happens and shuts down the world, but for you, that means TGR doesn't have the footage they need for a movie, so they talk to your production house, they grab footage from there, and you are put in the biggest ski movie in the world, and it's all because of some crazy disease?
Yep, crazy disease and dumb luck somehow worked out.
Oh, man. And can you describe your emotions when you see yourself in that first TGR movie? Like, you've got to be mind blown.
Yeah, it was a dream. I mean, I grew up watching them, and it was the coolest damn thing ever, like total dream. And I just felt like so lucky, honestly. I was like, how the hell did we finagle this one? And it was a total dream. Pretty cool.
So going into the next season, I would hope that you were able to shoot with TGR for Stoke the Fire, but you're not in the credits there. And I'm guessing that Liberty can't afford to buy you into the movie, and maybe it's a different time in the industry. And is this when you get on line skis and you kind of get back into TGR movies? Is after that Stoke the Fire year?
Yeah, I think that next year came through, and I was in great communication with all the guys at TGR, and they were like, hey, bud, this is kind of what you need to come up with. And I was like, oh, geez, like there's no way I can pull it off with my current sponsor list. So then, yeah, the following year I was kind of like, hey, I got the opportunity with TGR. If we want to do this deal, could we work this kind of TGR budget into it? And I was lucky enough to pull it off. Yeah. Again, lucky for sure.
So you get into TGR through the back door of COVID, and then you have a year off of TGR where you're thinking, man, I wish I could film with them, but I didn't. But you're in communication with them, so you do all the things you do to line up filming with them, I think, for Magic Hour or whatever the next movie you filmed with them was for. But when you think about that, what's the first TGR trip that you go on? Who's on it? And do you feel like you have to prove yourself on one of those trips?
The first trip I went on was in Cook City with Parkin and Amy Jane David, who I knew both of them. So it didn't feel like I was just like stepping into the hot seat with a bunch of big dogs. I was like buddies with them, and I had known the film crew too. So I definitely was like, all right, it's go time. Like I got to put some stuff together for sure. But I don't think I was too starstruck, or I didn't feel insane pressure. And honestly, the filmers over there, especially our crew we were working with, was really cool, really easy to work with. No like crazy pressure. We were dealing with a really bad snowpack that year too. So there was a lot of like stuff that we deemed off limits in terms of ski terrain. So kind of made some of the decisions easy.
Have you been on any trips, though, where you feel like you do have to prove yourself, or there are those big dogs on there that make it almost intimidating for you because you've grown up looking up to these guys?
Yeah, totally. Like, I feel like you kind of see the names and you hear about them, and they're like these big, gnarly, badass skiers. But then you meet them, they're just like total homies, and they just want to get home safe just like the next guy. So it's like pretty quickly we kind of become friends with everyone, and it doesn't feel like too much pressure.
These days you're working with Benshi, you're working with TGR, and what does your seasons look like? I mean, are you on the road from pretty much January through March getting footage and putting together your segments?
Yeah, totally. The past few years, there's been a lot of travel. This year I was basically on the road from early January until I just got home 2 days ago. And then I'm leaving again here next week. So it's a lot of travel, and it's tough because the past few years I've been doing at least 3 projects a winter. So you get one segment, you're hyped on, sweet, and then you kind of jump into the next month and you're like, well, fuck, I'm back to 0 footage. Let's do it again. So it's tiring, and it's taxing, but it's the best. I love it. I wouldn't change it for anything.
But when you do 3 segments a winter, each segment's going to have its standout parts. I mean, do you ever think to yourself, well, maybe I could do 1 segment in a winter and just have it all just killer and no filler whatsoever?
Totally. I would love that. It's just tough because, for instance, I did a line skis trip this year for 3 weeks, almost a month. And they kind of want to have their little project separate. So I'm part of that, and I'm hyped to be part of it. But I'm I got to go to that, get that segment done, which we had a sick trip, thankfully. And then this year, I didn't do TGR this year, just budget-wise. And then we did this Alaska thing. And I think that's probably all I'll come up with in terms of budget and time here.
So where will we see you next year?
We'll see. I'm hoping to shoot back with TGR. I'm loving just kind of being a bit of a producer and creating budgets and pulling the crew together and going on cool trips. I really like having the independence to create what I want, as opposed to just filming for a segment for, say, TGR, and then kind of what shows up. You don't really have a ton of say in the editing process. So I'm kind of leaning towards maybe going independent and creating independent media. So we'll see. But plans always change.
It's time for my second round of sponsors, and Elan Skis doesn't need to sponsor this podcast in the summertime, but they do it because they understand the importance of cultivating the stories that make the snow industry what it is. So while they're cultivating stories off snow, on snow, Elan is building a cult following here in the US, and there are a few reasons for that. First is that the award-winning Ripstick line has proven time and again to make you a better skier. The reason why? Elan uses the best materials known to man, and that's no joke. This is the same Elan known for building award-winning luxury yachts, so there's never any cutting corners, and the fit and finish is better than anything else on the ski wall. Just look up and down and compare your Elans to anything else, and you'll see the difference. The second reason why Elan's selling more skis in the US is their Playmaker line. Yep, Elan has a line of twin tips that will go head-to-head with anything on the mountain. They're light, they're lively, and they're built better than any other twin tips on the wall. I'm skiing the 101, and it's been my daily driver for 2 years, and they're so much fun. Before you buy your next pair of skis, please demo a pair of Elans, or just head on over to elanskis.com, pick up a pair, and trust me, you're going to elevate your skiing experience. My final sponsor this round is Stanley, the iconic Northwest brand that invented the category of keeping things hot and cold over 100 years ago. You remember Stanley from your grandfather's green thermos that kept his coffee hot and cold forever when he took you out on adventures. Well, Stanley still makes that bottle, and so much more. I know you know this because they are absolutely blowing up all over the world. With Stanley, you can think tumblers, water bottles, barware, camping utensils, coolers, vacuum bottles. There really is something for everyone, and you aren't going to find them overpriced like a lot of copycat designer brands that have popped up recently. Stanley is the originator, and they pride themselves on providing you with the best products at the best value. And that value gets even better when you shop with my code. That's right, when you head on over to stanley1913.com and go shopping, when you check out, enter the code SNOW30, that's all one word, the number 30 and no spaces, and you'll get 30% off your entire order. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. It's one of those interesting things for a pro skier because when you go independent, you cut your viewer base by a lot because TGR has just been around forever and everybody knows to look to them every single year. So if you're in a TGR movie, everybody in the ski community is going to know what you're doing. And if you're not, everybody has to seek you out and find out what you're doing. So it's a little bit difference of exposure. Do sponsors care at all, or do they just want you out there creating content?
Well, it's tough. The distribution is totally tough with independent media. I think personally, my sponsors right now are like, we'd rather have you do the independent and give us the footage or whatever it is, and we'll share it through our social channels or whatever. So I kind of think they love that. They're getting more out of it as a company. Like, we'll travel around and shoot, 10,000 photos a winter, and we'll just kind of throw it over to them. Whereas TGR, it's a little tougher with the distribution packages they're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, all that has to be written into the contract. I know working with TGR, when I was at K2 and we would do a sponsorship with them, we'd have to be very detailed in the contract of everything that we would want out of them, because if you don't write it in the contract, you're not going to get it.
Yeah, totally. And I think we have a lot more flexibility on our end as being independent. Like right now for this Alaska trip we just did, we're basically pitching it as we'll give you all of the footage, all of the photos, whatever you guys want. We'll make social cuts. We just need some money.
Okay.
And typically it's an easier sell for them because they're like, fuck, we're going to get everything we need out of one guy in one trip instead of spending a bunch of money with TGR and getting only a select amount of images and whatever it is.
Yeah. But we're talking about movies, but I think the biggest event in your career was the Kings and Queens of Corbett. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I think totally. I mean, that was huge, like just in terms of getting like eyes on me. I think that was probably the biggest it could be.
You went from being Jake Hopfinger, the skier that no one knew about, to being Jake Hopfinger, the dude that threw that double off of Corbett's and everybody was talking about. You could feel that, I would think, almost overnight.
And I kind of pigeonholed myself. In fact, a lot of people just know me from Corbett's, which is kind of funny, but I can't blame them.
Yeah, I mean, if they watch TGR, they'd see you as well, or if they stumble upon the Benshi stuff. But the King and Queens of Corbet's got so many millions of views. You know, you had so much exposure out there, and it had to just be one of those things where it was like, yeah, I'm a pro skier and I have all these sponsors on Thursday, but on Saturday after the contest, you really feel like a pro skier.
Yeah, it was really good for that, for sure. Like, it definitely brought a lot of eyes. My sponsors were super psyched. That event, it's just a media powerhouse. It gets so many eyes and so much viewership that it's a big deal, and I'm really psyched I was able to be a part of it for so long.
So let's talk about that event. First, when the most iconic feature at one of the most core mountains in the world is closed for like a month for a pro contest, does that piss all the locals off?
Yeah, I think they hate it. I think they totally hate it because it's like typically February in Jackson is pretty snowy, and everyone, it's, you know, you've been there, it's right at the bottom of the tram. So it's like everyone kind of wants to ski it, especially the tourists and everything. They're like, what the hell? It's closed. Like, oh, sorry, I don't know what to tell you. But it's great for the comp because you get to jump into a bunch of soft snow typically. But sometimes it's not soft.
For you, you come into town, and is it all stoked coming into this one because you know you're going to have a POW landing on this crazy feature? Or is there some fear because you know you're going to hawk yourself for dollars and respect?
No, I was scared for sure. Every year I've been freaking freaked out by that thing. It's kind of just like a big flat. Like, you wouldn't necessarily pick it out in the backcountry and be like, that thing's sick, I'm going to go jump way into that thing. Like,
right.
You kind of, I feel like we're doing it because time and the place and the eyes are on it. But no, I mean, I'm fucking scared of it for sure. But over the years, I've kind of, it's fine. And it's really just a morning of being gnarly and it's over.
Thinking about the night before the contest, you're sitting there with Parkin. I think you guys both threw doubles that year. And you guys knew that you were throwing doubles because you built a kicker on the side of Corbett's to do that. But when you're talking about it the night before, is everybody talking about what they're going to do on their line? Or is it just you and Parkin kind of sharing together and everybody's being secret about what they're going to do?
I think everyone's kind of like eyeing something up. Parkin and I think we're pretty vocal about it. We're like, oh, we're going to build this jump. Because it's kind of weird. Like, there's not a lot of room on top of it. So we kind of stepped in like right in the middle. And we're like, hey, we're going to build this jump. Is everyone cool with that? And everyone was looking at us like we were twisted. And we're like, I think it's the way to do it. Because you kind of build it a little further back because the landing's short. Like, any landing there is like right underneath it. So it was kind of like a proof of concept. I think Parkin and I both thought it was definitely possible, but it was pretty spooky because it was pretty far back. So you kind of had to like go pretty big into it. But yeah, I don't know. And then after that, I think people started hitting it. Like, a bunch of the guys in the comp were like, oh, it worked, sick, and they were hitting it. So I think everyone was cool with it.
And then with the whole contest itself, I mean, do you show up to Jackson and Red Bull puts you up in a nice hotel and they have meals for you and events for you, and then it's like party shred with everybody all day long? Is it that kind of vibe?
Yeah, it's the best. Yeah, it's so awesome. It's like the best week of the year with one gnarly day. So it's like, yeah, you get hosted at the bottom in the village there, and everything's paid for, and all the sickest skiers are there, and it's really the coolest event ever.
Just hearing you say that, I don't know why it reminded me of what's going on in mountain biking, but did you hear what went on at Crankworks last weekend?
Yeah, no, I'm seeing stuff go on. I haven't looked into it, though. What's going on?
So it was all the slopestyle men. They were unhappy with not getting an appearance fee because they all wanted 2,000 euros for showing up at the event.
Oh, geez.
The event pricing went up 10% from last year, but they wanted it to go up 37%. And then there was one other thing that they wanted, and I forget what it was.
Wow.
And I think the event organizers bowed down to two of the three things. They couldn't do the $2,000 thing, but they did it on like a Friday, and the event's supposed to be on a Saturday. And the men's slopestyle did not happen. The bad thing was, it was like the first time I think the women had a slopestyle that was going to be featured. There was something around the women's slopestyle there. And this kind of overshadowed what was going on with the women. And people looked at it as like the men's riders didn't get what they want. They complained and they walked away like a bunch of which is not totally true, because you got to think like maybe there were meetings beforehand that we don't know about. But to come into an event and strong arm the event organizers, to me, I guess it's something that you can do to get results, but these are the guys that built your whole sport up. And 10 years ago, when you couldn't make a penny jumping your mountain bike, Crankworks is kind of what created a ton of careers.
Totally, yeah.
I feel like for them to bite the hand that feeds them probably wasn't the best idea, but who knows, they'll probably bend to them and they'll be able to have their events again. So I don't know whose side I'm on, the athletes or the event organizers, but it just sucks when it comes down to that and athletes don't participate in an event that some people flew all the way across the world to go watch.
Yeah, that seems pretty lame to me.
Yeah.
That seems pretty lame.
And I don't have all the details, but you just reminded me about it for some reason, so I figured I'd bring it up. But I know you like mountain biking as well, so I figured we could talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. That does not happen at Kings and Queens. Everyone's pretty cool.
But when you think about it as we move further and further into Kings and Queens, because with biking, what started with like a big backflip and then tricks started progressing. I mean, you're throwing doubles. People are talking about, is there going to be a triple thrown this year? That is absolutely crazy. It didn't happen this year, obviously, and there are other years where it was too firm to see that. But I mean, with the ante being upped every year, I can see people wanting to make more money because you're putting your life on the line. But what do you think the future of the King and Queens of Corbet's is? Because it's got to be something more than a double in the future if that's what won it this year or last year.
No, I think you're right. I know people are wanting to do triples into it, and it's definitely not me, Mike. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a kid who's going to do it and probably stomp it. It's nuts. It's getting to a point where it's just kind of downright scary, to be honest. We've been talking for years about potentially changing the venue, but they've kind of pigeonholed themselves into that like Corbet's Couloir, Mecca skiing. Like there's a lot of spots on the hill at Jackson Hole Mountain Resort that would be like insane venues for a similar style competition. So we're like, let's do something like that, make more jumps, more creativity, less flat landings. It'll be awesome. But they kind of want to just keep doing that.
You have to use the name Corbett's because that's what the whole world knows.
Totally. I think they're going to keep doing it, and I can't wait to see what keeps going down into there. It's crazy.
Is that the first event that you've been at with a ton of media? And how do you do with like cameras up in your face and mics in your face? Is that comfortable or uncomfortable for you?
It was definitely super uncomfortable, but definitely gotten a little more comfortable being around that kind of environment over the years. But yeah, no, I still feel a little bit strange getting, interviewed and stuff. It's weird. But no, it's basically fun. And I've gotten to know all the media crew and everyone. They know how to make me say something.
Okay. So I could talk about a lot of things. Your magic hour tomahawk, using your brother's plane to find new zones, what's next in your career. But I have one story in my notes that I have no idea why I wrote them because I wrote them months ago. And I feel like it's going to be a great story, but I can't remember what it is. So I'm going to cue you up and hopefully it will be a great story. So the notes I have are the whole wet sled thing. And what was the deal with Ben Richards having to buy a sled? Was that an impulse decision?
Oh, yeah. We were in Revy last winter. And Ben, you surely have seen Ben Richards, right?
Yeah.
The kid's killing it. He came up to the sled trip, didn't have a sled, didn't have a truck. So we're like doubling him around. We're like, man, you got to get a rig, man. I'm pretty used to scrolling on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. So I like found a pretty sick truck and a good deal on a sled. I was like, hey, here you go. This is like $10,000 package. It'll be ready to go. He's a New Zealand resident and we were in Canada. So it was hard for him to get cash. So we did this huge cash debacle and like got him enough cash to do it. He pulled the trigger on it and he's still got the same sled and the same truck and he's running it. He's driving it all over the place. It's awesome.
So it was a pretty much spur of the moment thing where you're like, hey man, you need to get a truck. Oh, I found one. You got to buy it. And you like did it all that day.
Oh yeah. We did it like within 2 hours. We found the truck, hit the guy up. Hey, yeah, come on by. It's right in my driveway. We're like, all right, be there in 10. And it was sweet. We like totally lowballed the guy. I feel kind of bad about it, but we got a good deal on everything. And he didn't want it just for that trip. He wanted to like kind of step into the sledding. He's living in like Squamish, Whistler area. So he was like, I got to get a sled at some point. So I might as well just kind of do it. And he's killing it on the sled. It's awesome.
Nice. So now it's time for Inappropriate Questions, and you know the deal. I get someone to ask you 3 questions, and they can be anything. But this week, I reached out to 2 different people because I wasn't sure if anybody was going to get back to me, and both of them came through, so you get a double dose of inappropriate questions.
Nice.
The first one we're going to start with is with a fellow line teammate of yours. I'm talking about Jonnie Merrill. And Jonnie had 3 questions for you, but I cut a couple of them away. One was political, and he was going to make you kind of comment on Trump and Biden and RFK, and I figure we won't talk about that one. And then one was something else that we weren't going to talk about that would kind of throw you under the bus as well. So I am only playing 2 of his questions, and his first question has like 6 questions in it. So you're going to have to listen to this very hard, and it is going to be a polarizing answer, I feel like, or it could be. But let's go with Jonnie Merrill's question number 1.
Hell yeah.
What's your opinion on gatekeeping? Is it necessary? Who's doing it wrong? Who's doing it right? How do you keep a zone tight without being a dick? What's the etiquette that we should be displaying in the backcountry? You know, how do you navigate situations where people with loose lips are blowing zones? Yeah, and like generally, what's too much when it comes to gatekeeping, and how do you navigate that space and have difficult conversations with people when they need to be had? You know, you speak highly of gatekeeping in surf culture. I think sometimes certain aspects of surf culture can be a little whack. But yeah, where's the line? What's best practice? What should people be doing out there when it comes to keeping good zones good?
That is polarizing.
Yeah, it's polarizing, and it sounds like he's talking about localism, like in the surf break, but in the backcountry. And what's your take on his questions?
Well, Jonnie and I have spoke about this quite a bit. So yeah, I'm really into surfing. Surfing obviously has a lot of like localism, and some specific spots are held very tight by the people that run them, just as a form of crowd control, basically. My take is I'm not insanely pro gatekeep. I just think there needs to be some sort of ethics that go on in the backcountry in terms of all of these awesome zones that maybe not a lot of people know about, and kind of not keeping them a secret, but telling the people that need to know kind of thing. I don't think there needs to be any sort of like slashing tires in the parking lot style, but I think it's kind of nice to be able to hold secrets, I think. And the people that learn and that go out with the right crew and they figure stuff out and they know where stuff is, that's rad. But I don't think it should be allowed to just go out, tell everyone where you're going. This is where it is. This is how you do it. This is how you put the sled lap in. I think there's a lot to be said for learning as you go and using your brain and learning it for yourself. But that's pretty hardball. I don't actually know how I feel about it. I just think gatekeeping in certain scenarios could be beneficial, you could say, because there's a lot of zones that we ride a lot that are getting pretty crazy out there, and honestly even more for a safety standpoint too. You can get 2 or 3 crews riding in the same zone, and there can be too much going on in a small area. So I don't know, what's your take?
I mean, I'm not out there like you are, so my take is way different. And I go out there with a guide, and I'm going either on a cat trip or a heli trip. I mean, I have a totally different life than you, but this is your everyday job where you're going out that way. So for me, I feel like I don't like apps or anything where people are posting coordinates or where they're going to be. I think you need to explore to find your zones and find your features. And that's what's always made the movie so unique, is that you don't see footage from the same place and everything, although you start to see that as the years moved on. But my take on it is there's no way to control it. People have to have respect.
Yeah, I agree. I think secrets can be good sometimes.
Yeah. How about when you see people out there, when you see another group in a zone that really has no idea what they're doing, you see people high marking shit that they're not supposed to be doing on their sleds, which is just dangerous. Do you go up and say something?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely had to kind of call some people out. Mostly it's just sledders that just have no idea we're trying to ski, and they're just thrashing, going straight up the slopes we're trying to ski that are like potentially super hazardous. We're like, hey crew, like, we got people coming down slope, you're coming up slope going 85 miles an hour. Like, can we just get this for an hour and you guys can come back? And typically everyone's super cool about that. But mostly it's just a safety standpoint. Like, we don't want anything crazy going on.
All right. Well, that is his question 1. We will jump into his second inappropriate question. And here it is.
Bonus question from the Line fam. What does Poopy Jake mean to you?
We were just in British Columbia for a while with the whole line team. They're the best crew in the world. They're the best buddies ever. The crew kind of got all stoned one night. I had just mounted a nice fresh pair of skis and I had my stickers all out, stickered them up and everything. And one sponsor of mine, Sweet Protection, they have these die cut stickers that you can kind of cut up and spell out anything you want.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, they wrote Poopy Jake on the tail of my skis, thinking I wasn't going to find it for like a month. So I'm still running a Poopy Jake sticker, but I didn't shit my pants or anything, which is good.
All right. When's the last time you shit your pants?
Like maybe 2 years ago, I definitely like hit a bit of a slapper flat landing and kind of shit my pants a little bit. It sucked.
It happens, man. It happens.
Totally. It was brutal.
Now we're going to go into your second set of inappropriate questions. This comes from Parkin Costain. You were able to ask Parkin inappropriate questions. He's now able to repay the favor for you. He's got 3 questions. I'm going to cue them up right now, and here's question number 1 from Parkin.
What was the deal with you just driving around on all these old trucks that break down, and you and Dags were up in Revelstoke, and you broke down on the side of the road? What ensued after that?
Yeah, this kind of sucked. So we were skiing near like Sycamoose, which is a bit west of Revelstoke. We were coming back over like Highway 1. There's a pass that dumps you back into Revelstoke. I drive like an old beat up turbo diesel Dodge. Alternator went out on top of the pass. So my truck was basically fried. I like called the tow truck company. I was like, hey, can you guys come pick this thing up for me? And they're like, yeah, no problem. Like our guy's pretty far away. He can be there in 2 hours. I'm like, all right, sweet. Do you want me to stay with the truck? They're like, nah, you're good. Like my buddy was behind me, picked me up and went. They basically were like, leave your keys in your gas cap, lock your truck, leave your keys in your gas cap so our guy can get in to tow it. All is good. Pick it up. And then the next morning they towed it to like this big old like shop yard kind of thing.
Okay.
I went, found an alternator, was going to put everything in. I had like a toolbox in my truck. I was like, huh, weird. Like my toolbox is gone. And then like, I remember I left like a bunch of ski stuff, boots, bags, pow surfs, like all sorts of shit in my truck.
Ugh.
And everything was gone. So my truck fully got robbed on the side of Highway 1 up there in BC. And luckily we didn't get anything critical stolen. Like I was with Alex D'Agostino, our filmer, and he was like, I'm taking my camera bag. Otherwise that thing was going to be gone with a bunch of red cameras and stuff. So yeah, that was pretty shitty, but I got a nice insurance check from it.
I mean, if he would have left his red camera bag in there, there would be a lot of questions around what he's doing with his life, because you can't leave a red camera bag on the side of the road, even if it is Canada.
Oh, big time. Yeah. I mean, I had no idea. And looking back at it now, I've heard that highway is notorious for theft out of cars because there's a lot of cars that get broken down, I guess. So, yeah, I'm definitely learned a lesson there for sure.
All right, let's go to question number 2.
We haven't gotten to shoot much this winter, but in past seasons, this tradition has become quite obvious that you seem to take. Every morning before your first line of the day, you just seem to disappear for 15, 20 minutes, and everyone's wondering where you are. What's going on?
There we go. The mystery of where did Jake go?
Yeah, you know what? This could be relevant to the Poopy Jake sticker. I definitely have a bit of a tradition in the morning. We you know, we're usually up super early. We're at Trailhead by 7. You don't have a ton of time to process. You got 3 cups of coffee in you, so I definitely pack the TP in the pants and have a quick session in the woods off the sled before we go skiing. That's basically a standard every day for me, unfortunately, but I've learned to quite like it, actually.
So 20 minutes dumping in the snow, and that's all it takes for you to get your day going. We'll go into your final inappropriate question, and here it comes.
And last but not least, what was up with your funky foot fungus at Kings and Queens a couple years ago?
So we got some awesome hockey rinks here in Bozeman, like outdoor pond hockey.
Okay.
And it was basically a week before Kings and Queens. I was playing hockey like every day. It was so sick. We had a sweet team. We were playing. I got this kind of nasty blister, kind of like right on my ankle for my hockey skate. And, you know, I don't change my ski socks as nearly as much as I should. I was skiing and the thing got super infected. Like it blew up. It was gnarly. It hurt so damn bad in my ski boot. Like I could push through some discomfort, but it was genuinely downright painful to go skiing. So basically Kings and Queens rolled around. I hadn't skied in a week because I had an infected fucking blister on my ankle. And then I also had brand new ski boots because I thought they were going to be better, give me a little more room. But I basically like rolled up day one, put my boots on at the top, and just went and pushed through the pain, and it sucked. It was brutal. I totally regret playing hockey, but half of me doesn't.
All right. Well, that's Inappropriate Questions, and that's our podcast. And for a kid who came up thinking he was going to be a ski racer, you made the ultimate pivot when it came to college and went from an East Coast amateur racer to a West Coast full-on pro skier, dude. And I mean, for you, it's like while you've crushed it on your skis for a while, one double helped change the trajectory of your whole ski career, and it's pretty crazy how things like that can work sometimes. Thanks for sharing your story, and thank you for your time.
Epic, Mike. You're the man.
So that was time with Jake Hopfinger, and not only is that kid a great skier, but the whole time I was chatting with him, I kept catching myself thinking, wow, this is a really cool and a really nice kid. And while I was a fan of his skiing before the podcast, I'm now a big fan of all things Jake Hopfinger, and he's so young that it'll be cool to see where his skiing ultimately takes him. And what's also cool about Jake is that he's got this side hustle. He doesn't have to rely on sponsors to make his dream trips happen like a lot of other pro skiers. And not every other pro skier has the outside earning potential to make those things happen. So it's pretty cool the position that Jake is in and what he's been able to do with his career. That's the podcast. At this point, I want to ask you to review me wherever you listen to me, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, or whatever player you have. There's usually a rating system, and since I don't ask much of you, please spend the minute or two it takes to do that for me. Thanks for doing it, thanks for listening, and please support the brands that make this show happen. I'm talking about Peter Glenn Ski and Sports, Outdoor Research, Elon Skis, Stanley, and Best Day Brewing. Have a great week, everyone.